Let me make sure I do the recording. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day number 3, the virtual Lacrosse Goalie 3 Summit. Day number 3, we got 4 more sessions for you today. 4 more sessions today, 4 more sessions tomorrow, and that'll be a wrap on the summit. What do you guys think so far? It's been some awesome sessions the first 2 days. We still owe you 1 session. Matt DeLuca, we had to reschedule. We're probably going to do that next week. But I'm really excited for today's session, the session we're going to do right now. It's going to be a little bit different because up until now, we've really been focused on, the goalies themselves, right? What are some techniques? What are some drills I can use? And even if you're a coach or a parent, it's great to learn that, but it's really for the goalies. How do we train the goalies? And this session is going to be a little bit different because what we're talking about is, all right, if you are a lacrosse goalie mom or a lacrosse goalie dad, how do I support my youth goalie? And with that, I want to welcome in Rod Rullman. Rod, how are we doing today?
Doing very well, very well. Glad to be with you all again. And Damon, thank you for putting this whole thing on. It's just great that you do this, and I hope that everybody gets plenty out of it. I can see some comments coming across the bottom of the screen. You're doing a great job with it, and I'm happy and very honored to be a part of it. So I'm doing well. I'm doing fine. Damon wanted me to just introduce myself a little bit. Again, my name is Rodney Rullman. Let's get right to it. I'm 67 years old and played lacrosse at the University of Virginia, and I've been playing ever since I graduated from Virginia for several years beyond that, and then finally hung the stick up about 3 years ago or so, and maybe do a little something with it down the road, but we'll see. But I have been training boys and girls in the goal. Way back, starting in the early 1980s, I've been doing this, and love doing it. I have a great time with it. I really started coaching more and more, training more of the girls over the past 5-6 years or so, and I've had a great time with that as well. And I must say, I coach the girls in the exact same way that I coach the boys. And I have been asked about why I do that, considering there's the girls' game and the boys' game, but all I know is both goals on the field are 6x6, whether it's the boys' field or the girls' field. And the aggravation and the frustration that young boys and girls and older boys and girls and so forth have to put up with is, in my opinion, very much the same. And then I think about the girls when they first start out in youth lacrosse. It's tough enough with the boys when you get in there as a young kid and you're getting hit all the time and so forth. But at least in the boys' game, you can kind of get your defense mad and tell them to go after them and maybe knock them down or whatever the heck they start telling kids to do and so forth. But in the girls' game, you can't do that. So if your defense is not particularly up to snuff in your early years of being in the goal as a young girl, you're in for an interesting time, and it's a heck of a challenge. So yeah. Leading into that, what we're going to be talking about today essentially are 2 very difficult jobs. One is simply what Damon and I have been doing for a very long time, and that is being a lacrosse goalie, and putting up with all different kinds of shots and so forth for many years. That's an incredibly difficult job when you think about what they have to do. And I would guess that if there are a lot of parents listening in right now, I would guess that most of you probably, if not all of you, probably have never experienced what it's like to have a ball come at you in the boys' game at about 95 miles an hour. And I got news for you. The ladies nowadays in college and beyond, they can throw that pill pretty darn fast as well. So it's pretty unbelievable to see that thing coming at you and actually stand in there and make that save. I can tell you that at a young age, the younger keepers, the youth keepers, it's an incredible task that they have to put up with, and at times it's a bit on the painful side too, because no doubt about it, the kids are learning how to play the goal. Guess what? The kids are also learning how to play defense and also learning how to shoot. So you get hit a lot. The second hardest job is being a parent of a goalie, trying to be supportive, whatever you're trying to do. So we're going to try to address both of those things today.
Yeah. It's interesting with the growth of lacrosse, which has been so great. What that means is, the sport's growing. It's awesome. But what that also means is you have a lot of kids coming home to their parents being like, hey, mom or dad, I'm going to be the goalie, or I want to play lacrosse. And like they never even played, or like you said, Rod, if they did play, maybe it was in the field. So there's a lot of questions. And the way we're going to do this session is I actually sent an email to my list and I said, hey, we're going to have Rodney Rullman, great goalie himself, a great goalie coach, but also, a dad on. And we're just going to answer questions about that you have as a lacrosse goalie mom or a lacrosse goalie dad. So we have a bunch of questions that I'll read out and then we'll do like a conversation back and forth. But if you guys are on the call right now and you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box. There's a chat box, which you can just chat in. Actually, Rodney, John Gillespie says hello from the West Coast, and Anna sends her best.
Right back at you. Right back at you. I hope you're doing well.
So there we go. So yeah, for the Q&A box, just drop your questions in there, and we'll try to get to those. We've got plenty of questions to go through because, like Rod said, if lacrosse goalie is the hardest position out there, lacrosse goalie mom or dad is a close second. It is tricky. First question we got, Rod, is how do I keep my son or daughter motivated to be a goalie?
Well, let's put it this way. Not everybody's going to be as much of a lacrosse junkie as I was when I was very, very young. But when I was in the 7th grade, that's when I actually got into playing the goal, to start playing the goal. And the way I got in was my brother went and told a little fib to the 7th grade coach that I wanted to be a goalie, which was categorically wrong. I never said I wanted to be a goalie, but he told the guy that I wanted to be the goalie. So, of course, the coach approached me with it and stuck me in there, and all this kind of stuff took place and whatnot. But keep in mind, I have a brother who was 5 years older than I, who was a 2-time All-American at the University of Virginia. He was an All-American attackman and an All-American midfielder. And again, he's 5 years older than I. And he was an athlete in high school that I clearly looked up to and followed around and probably pestered him to death. But I had someone that I was watching and I truly wanted to be like. I wanted to be like him. And I remember distinctly standing at the top of Scott Stadium at the University of Virginia with my mom. My dad was up top taking films of the games. He took films of lacrosse games for the NCAA, but my mother and I stood at the top of the stadium, and I'm looking down on the field that my brother is playing on. And I turned to my mother. I was in the 8th grade at this time. And I turned to my mother and I said, I want to be on a field just like this someday. Or I basically told her, I'm going to be on a field like this someday. Little did I know that 4 years later, I would actually be on that same field playing in a lacrosse game. And in my first year at Virginia, I actually played Army in the first round of the NCAA tournament in 1972 on that field. But that was my motivation. That was my catalyst, I should say, because I always like to say that in order to motivate somebody or to be able to self-motivate, there has to be some form of a catalyst out there inside you, in your heart, your belly, your head, or whatever, that kind of opens you up to being excited about it, all right? Mm-hmm. So in answer to the question about how do I motivate my kid to be a goalie, I'm not real sure you can actually motivate your kid to be a goalie, except perhaps you're in a position where there are not any goalies around in the youth league, and they're struggling to find goalies, which is very common nowadays. Yeah. And you kind of want to suggest to your son or daughter that maybe they would think about being in the goal. You might try asking them, but unless they really have something inside them that kind of gives them a little push as to why they really want to do it, I'm not so sure that you can necessarily immediately motivate them to decide they're going to be a goalie. You can chat about it, but the one main point that I want to make sure you all take away with you as parents and coaches and so forth, and also as players, that is, it has to be the goalie's idea to want to do this. From day one, it's got to be your son or daughter's idea to actually want to step into this whole new world and attempt it. It may go fairly smooth for a while and then it blows up. Why? In the early going, you get hit a lot. Yeah. And I often think there has to be something wrong with us to want to continue to stand in there and get hit in those early years. But that's just the way it goes. Now, whether or not you can encourage your son or daughter to stay with it and keep on doing it really comes down to how much fun are they actually having in this early going process. If all they're doing is getting in and getting hit, if all they're doing is getting in there and there's hardly any defense, because you got to remember, young defense is learning too. And a lot of times their lessons are at the expense of the goalie. So they get hit all the time and they get scored on all the time. And it's a very difficult place to be. So it's got to be fun. It has to be fun out the gate, and then you got to keep it as being fun. So there's any number of things that you can do with a coach. The coach can help out in that respect. Talk to the kid about playing in the goal, maybe look at some footage of girls or boys in the goal from college games or something like that. Any number of things. But as far as actually keeping that kid motivated to play, you got to keep the kid having fun going forward, and then help the kid get through these very difficult times that are going to be coming. And I've seen some of these questions here that talk about my son or daughter has been playing for a while. Now they're thinking about stopping. They just don't want to do it anymore. And, that's a problem. But probably they're not having fun. Number two, they're probably not in the mood to be motivated. All right. At that point, it's changed. It's no longer really in their mindset to do it. And that's the hard part. It's a very hard thing for parents to understand and deal with, because you really would like to see your son or daughter be successful at this. But this whole thing about deciding to get in there and put up with it, that's difficult. That's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the reasons I put on this entire summit is because there's a lot of coaches out there who, are doing the best that they can with coaching, right? I mean, they're giving it their all, they're giving it 100%, but it's a lot to coach a lacrosse team, and they don't have the lacrosse goalie knowledge, right? So they don't know what to do with that goalie. And as a result, the training is to put them into the shooting drills, right? And they just get pounded and they take a beating. And like you said, Rod, they have no fun, right? And then obviously, there goes the motivation. So one thing I try to do with these summits is provide a lot of drills and a lot of encouragement that you can work on that then makes it fun. And the second thing I would add there is you really, as a lacrosse team, you really have to have this culture of respect with the goalie. It's the same deal in ice hockey, right? That's why the lacrosse players run and go get the goalie, go give the goalie a hug after the game, because you have to have this respect, because it's a very hard position, right? It's really hard. And if you don't celebrate the wins, like if you don't go just nuts on the saves and you don't give them that respect, like allow them to, get the hugs after the game, be the first to get the handshake, be first in line, in the post-game handshake, then it's not going to be as fun. So I think, if you can help as a coach or if you're a parent, chat with the coach and make sure you've got that culture of respect for the goalie and the team. And then two, you're just going nuts on saves. And it doesn't matter if they were just standing there and they got hit. In fact, my very first save that I ever made at the collegiate level, I switched to goalie from midi. Right. And so I've been playing goalie for 2 weeks, and I was horrible, scared of the ball. When the ball would come, I would flinch and close my eyes and basically move out of the way, which is all the opposite of what you want as a goalie. And then we're playing a game, competitive game. We were the number 1 seed at the time, and we were playing a number 3 seed, and our goalie gets a slashing penalty. And so our coach looks down the low and he goes, "Damon, you're in." And I'm like, "What? I'm in?" Right. So I run out there. I'm totally cold. I have no idea what I'm doing. And they do the man up offense. They're whipping it around. And the guy takes a shot from top center 10 yards away. And I don't even move. And it just hits me square in the face mask. and our team just goes nuts. The sideline just goes nuts. We end up winning the game. It was actually a huge moment in the game. I got the game ball. And from there, like, I really fell in love with the goalie position, because even, you know, when you're just there, like, take one off the helmet, you got to go nuts on those saves.
I saw a comment come across the bottom of the screen indicating that they take their goalie and allow, I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but allow the goaltender to lead certain drills, lead calisthenics, you know, be obviously put into a leadership position. And I agree with that. I think that's a great idea. And that gets the kid immediately involved with the rest of the players. Now you got to remember, young kids, they, especially in the early going, they're not going to be terribly, unless they're somewhat unusual. And I mean that from the standpoint of training. Young kids are not going to be terribly interested in getting bombarded with various types of technique and fundamentals and all this kind of stuff. They just need to have a fun experience. Because there's so many different things that are going to take place going forward that are unpredictable. And the more you've made it fun, and I like that idea of leading drills and getting involved with the other players and doing that in the early going, because time is going to come where your son or daughter is going to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to stay with it, and then how much do they really want to learn with it? How far do they want to go? And, you know, how interested are they in involving themselves in some serious training? And what I mean by serious training is, when the kids that I train, I teach them a very simple, generic, basic way of playing the goal, and then we drill the daylights out of it. Every time I see a kid, we do the same things over and over and over, just to make sure that they have learned as best as possible the fundamentals of playing in the goal. A lot of the other stuff, the fancy stuff, a lot of that stuff comes down the road and comes as they get more mature in the goal. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be, you know, absolute mature young men and women or anything like that. But a kid in the goal who's 13 years old, who really wants to train, who really wants to get good at it, and is just really self-motivated, just really into it, that kid will probably be fairly easy to drill and to train and work hard, because that person clearly has said, I want to do this. So you get the idea. The child, the kid, is the one who's making the determination as to whether or not this adventure is going to continue to go forward. And depending upon how things go in that early going, and sometimes they don't go so well, and you have to identify in young people, young keepers, you gotta almost identify for them that they're struggling, and maybe it's not the right idea, and maybe they ought to step back for a little while. I've seen that. I've actually had a couple of occasions where years ago I had a kid that was 8, 9, 10 years old or something like that, and I was helping to coach a youth league in town here. And I know the dad was very, very supportive and so forth, and really wanted his son to enjoy this and be a goalie and so forth and so on. It was very apparent not too long into it, this was just not going to work. This young man was not in the same mindset that perhaps maybe his dad was. All right, I don't know, but all I know is that, and the only thing that was important to me was that that kid was not really in it. And you got to be careful with that, because that's when they can get hurt. So I went to the dad and I told him, I said, not going to work right now. I said, I think you ought to give him a chance. I think you ought to give him a chance to back out gracefully, maybe play other positions, see what he wants to do. And then I spoke to the young boy about it. And I told him, if you ever want to pick up the stick again and come back and do some training and get back into it, you let me know. You just pick up that telephone and you call me and I'll be there for you. Well, it was a year later, a solid, at least a year later, that phone call came and we trained. And he was a different kid then, all right? Not just because he was a year older, but his mindset changed. And it was all his idea. And I was delighted to see the kid go. Well, he went to Lynchburg College and he played. And he played. He had a nice career, and I was very happy for him. But it was his idea. Again, that's where it keeps going back to, in my opinion. It's got to be their idea.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned in that answer was, getting the goalie involved in other drills. And it kind of goes to this question that Allison Bronco asked that someone else wrote in and asked previously. I don't know if it was Allison, but, the question is essentially, how can goalies be a part of the team? I mean, we're like a little bit different. And there's certain drills where, yeah, we're off on our own doing our own individual work. But some parents say that, their goalie feels like, or their goalie does not like being separated from the rest of the team to do goalie drills. The goalie doesn't feel like she's a part of the team. To what do you say to that parent?
Well, when I played in Virginia, I also was told back in the 7th grade that if I played the goal, I wouldn't have to do all the sprints and all that stuff. Now that interested me. I'm not, and when I run out of fear. And that's what I did when I played in Virginia. I run the ball downfield and feet don't fail me now, but I'm not a runner. That's not my thing. But the bottom line is when I got to Virginia, I did run. I did some of that long distance stuff and it killed me. But I also did every single one of the drills, every one of them, the ground ball drills, one-on-one, two-on-one ground ball drills, two-on-one ground ball drills, all the passing drills, everything that every midfielder, defenseman, and attackman did as far as handling their stick and running and ball drills and so forth. I was involved in all of them, okay? Now, at some point in practice, the girls who are offensive players are going off to one end of the field, and they're going to probably do some shooting drills. And then defensive guys and gals will maybe do whatever the drills they do. At some point, your son or daughter is going to have to accept the fact that that's the time where if you are fortunate enough, that's another thing here, is how fortunate is a team to have somebody there who can take the time and is dedicated to helping train and teach and train a young or a youth goalie, all right? So, but that takes getting away from your friends. That takes going down and getting in that circle of enjoyment and getting in the goal and working on different kinds of shots and doing your own goalie drills with your coach, all right? But as far as involving your son or daughter in all of the other drills, I have no problem with that at all. And as a matter of fact, there's nothing wrong with working on your stick and running and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Outlet passes, where the goalie gets in the goal and they work on passing the ball to the defenders breaking out away from the goal. Any number of things there. I've seen full field fast break drills where they got goalie at one end, goalie at the other end, and goalie makes a nice outlet pass to a breaking midfielder who takes it downfield. Now it's coming back the other way. It's fast action, and everybody's involved, and your kid in the goal is involved with the rest of the team. There has to be time where your son or daughter is going to have to reserve themselves to the fact that they're going to go get in that box, that 6x6, and they're going to work on a lot of different things. So then when the team finally comes back together and does little scrimmages together, your goalie is hopefully ready to get in there and take care of that. Now, as long as we're talking about drills, I've been told that some colleges are actually doing their shooting drills, particularly the ones in close. They're actually doing them with tennis balls or softer balls and whatnot. Over the years, it's been my experience over the years with lots of goalies that I've trained and kids that I've observed, there are a lot of injuries that take place in the goal, particularly if you're not wearing the right equipment. And I think Damon's doing a piece at the end of the summit on equipment or something of that nature. A kid called me the other day who I've not trained yet, but just called me and said, I need to get a new pair of gloves. What do I get? Do I get ones with or without the thumb things? Well, I don't know if you can see it, but I have a scar here and there's a plate in my thumb and there are 8 screws in that. And that's as a result of a ball that in a weird way hit the top of I was over like this, hit this right here and took this section and moved it backwards. So I had surgery out in Vail, Colorado on it. Had I had a glove that had one of those thumb things in it, I probably wouldn't have had that injury. And therefore, it's so important to have the proper equipment on and and approach things from the standpoint of trying to survive in there instead of getting killed. Shooting drills, where you put a goalie in there and you take 2-3 guys, bring the ball down, they pass it between them, and then they step in and let it rip, and many times letting it rip very close. I think that's problematic. And I don't like it. And when I was coaching here in town, I used to tell them, go put one of those boards up in the goal, because I'm not going to, goalies are at a premium. You get a kid that's really training hard and working, and you hurt this kid in practice, you're going to be very sorry, because it's not like there are 6,000 of them around just dying to get in there. So I think it goes towards coaches being cognizant of the fact that if you're going to have them in there for some of these drills, you might want to go, particularly these ones in close, might want to go with some tennis balls. I'm not real fond of tennis balls or anything like that, especially for passing and whatnot. But if a kid's going to get hit, drill him in the head or whatever, let's try not to debilitate the kid. And also at the same time, you're in serious trouble if your goaltender during drills starts flinching, doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You probably ought to get that kid the heck out of the goal before you get him hurt, and before she becomes terribly unmotivated to be in there. It's not fun. There's nothing fun about it. I realize that there are some people who are probably thinking, yeah, but it's a rite of passage. They got to go through that. You can't protect them forever and blah, blah, blah. I agree. One step at a time, though. One step at a time, you just kind of work their way into it. It is such a dicey kind of position for young boys and girls to actually decide they want to do that. And because there are not lots and lots of kids that are dying to be in the goal, you got to be careful about bringing them along, because if they decide they want to quit and you don't have another goalie, that's a problem. That's the worst of man down.
Yeah. I like you said, I'm doing a whole session at the end of this on lacrosse goalie equipment. So I don't want to get too into it. I will say that there was a question from Frank, as what are your thoughts on shin protection? I think we're both very much in favor. Thumbs up. And I realize a lot of kids don't want to wear it because there's this culture of lacrosse where goalies don't wear leg protection, and that's unfortunate, right? I would say that if you listen to my podcast, which I interview, all the top pros, and I ask them like in practice, hey, are you wearing shin guards? Like all of them are like, yeah, I am. Absolutely. You kidding me? Like I would not, I don't want to take that much damage. Or I talked to Trevor Tierney yesterday's session. He's had 4 surgeries on his shins. So you can believe he's for protection. So anyway, that's enough about equipment. Let's move on to another question. That's a really interesting one.
Damon, excuse me 1 second. If I could just make one comment about equipment.
Okay.
Years ago, I had a coach call me about a kid in the middle school telling me that he had a problem with his kid. And I said, shooting, stepping, stopping the ball. But no, he's really good. He's really good. How old is the kid? 12 years old. So I said, what's the problem? And his answer to me was, I think he's wearing too much equipment. And I what? And he goes, yeah, don't you think it's kind of sissiest to be wearing this and this and this? Well, shoot, if I had my way, folks, and I want you young kids to hear this. And anybody who disagrees with it, just call me. I'll be glad to chat with you about it. But I got news for you. If it were legal, I'd wear a trash can in the goal nowadays. Just put my arms in it, just stand in there so you don't get killed. You wear as much equipment as you want. As long as it's legal, wear it. If it makes you feel comfortable in there, wear it. I told this coach, okay, if you want to try to do something for this kid, go ahead and start stripping off some of the things. Just please don't take the helmet and the chest protector off, but go ahead and take his shin guards off, and go ahead and take those thigh pads off that you think, or the arm pad, or whatever that you think looks kind of sissious. Take that off, and then call me in about a week and let me know where your goalie went. And he said, what do you mean? I said, because as soon as you start doing that, you're likely going to lose that kid. All right. You goalies wear what you want to wear. Now, I believe in the girls' game, it's mandated you must wear thigh pads. And I think it's great. Shin guards. I had a girl that played at JMU many years ago that I trained, and I had the unfortunate task of having to tell her during one of at our final training session after she had surgery. I had to walk up to her after about 15, 20 minutes and tell her that she was done. And I meant done from the standpoint of her career. She got hit so many damn times in the shin that she got some kind of infection or whatever in the sheathing around the muscles. And that ended it. Her career ended. Shin Guards, I don't care. Boys wear them. All I know is that anybody who says that young man who's wearing all that equipment must be a sissy. I want him to call me and make an appointment and come see me, and I'm going to put them in the goal. And we'll see. You need to understand what they're going through. Go ahead, Damon.
There you go. The next question I want to get to is a really good one. And it's probably a situation that every parent has been in. And if not, it's a situation that every parent of a goalie is going to be in. And it's after your kid has a bad game, right? So, you get shelled. You lose 16 to 5, right? 20 to 7. You give up 20 goals. As a parent, how do you then support that kid after the game? What's your thoughts on that, Rod?
Well, the first thing not to do is immediately start to talk with the kid about what went wrong with everybody else that resulted in your kid getting shelled. And the reason I say that, and I actually tell that to the parents of the kids that I train, I tell them when your son or daughter has a bad one and comes home and they're in a nasty mood, they're in no mood to hear anything that, just leave them alone. Bottom line is I tell the parents, don't immediately extend the sympathy cards. And the reason is as early as I could possibly do it, depending upon the age and the mentality of the kid and so forth, I immediately start training kids to understand their responsibility as a goaltender to their team defense. And at the same time, the defense needs to be taught what their responsibility is to help take care of their goalie. There are a lot of things that we train and we teach to help run a defense and to help make the defense play in a certain way that limits the aggravating, very difficult shots to save, limits them perhaps more to the outside shots and things of that nature. So what we do, and I've had plenty of goalies, when I was coaching, I would stand there and I would watch. I'm not yelling anything out. The coaching's done. The training's done for that game. As I like to say, I tell Damon, it's like a horse race. You train the horse, put someone up on it, put it in the paddock and let it run. Hope like hell it runs well and hope maybe it wins. But when it gets on the other side of the track, I've never seen a trainer yell across the track. Bottom line is your kid gets in the goal. If he or she is trained properly, they're out there to play, and you just let the cards kind of fall. When you get a timeout, perhaps if they're fortunate enough to have someone standing there who can listen to them when they're complaining about something or asking questions, that's the time you can interject some comments. But we pretty much train these kids to understand what their job is in the goal. So when they get home after a bad game, I would like the parents to do, really, I guess what my dad used to do with me if he had the opportunity to see me after a nasty one, he would just simply ask me, what could I have done to better help things? What could I have done? I'll give you an example. The dreaded thing is being in the stands as a parent. Your son or your daughter lets a shot in that everybody thinks you should have had, but at the same time, it might be a shot where the midfielder comes down. Nobody really goes out to pick that person up, steps in, time, space, hands free, bang, goal. Well, believe it or not, that's partially your son's fault. Because, and my kids that I train know that, I'll ask him, did you push that kid out to the ball? And if he'll say, yes, I yelled to him and I'll ask the kid, did you hear him telling you? And somehow or another, communication was no good. And that's partially the goalie's fault. So when you're trying to deal with your kid who's had a bad game, don't worry about what everybody else did wrong. Ask your son or daughter, what could they have done, or what were they doing that they were trying to help the defense? Perhaps the defense wasn't listening. That's a coach issue, all right? That's not your daughter or son's issue. That's your coach's issue. Your coach ought to know that and see that, so you don't have to worry about going to the coach and saying, my son's getting lit up because your defense, blah, blah, blah. Let the coach deal with that. And if there are any coaches listening, please deal with it, because it's a team kind of thing. And if the defense is not going to listen to the goalie, there's no sense in adult goalie talking, but you'll kind of get deaf ears with me on that, because a goalie, I think, has to talk. Just find out, what does your son or daughter feel about the game from the standpoint of critiquing and literally coaching themselves. What could they have done? Were you not, hey, did you think you were seeing the ball pretty well today? What does that mean? That means, did your son, he has a day from hell where he lets lots of goals in from the outside. We'd like to see goalies stop most of those. The question that comes up is, with me and talking with my keepers, I'll just simply say, did you see it? Did you see that? Did you see that shot? And what that means is, did they see the actual release of the ball from the head of the stick? And if they look at me like I've got 5 heads, that tells me they didn't. And I've got news for you. If you don't see the release of a shot, the odds of you having a decent chance of saving it are measurably less. So turn the conversation into a conversation of constructive critique, so to speak. All right. Yeah. Where your son takes the time, or daughter takes the time, to kind of pick at themselves a little bit. What did you learn out of today's debacle? What happened? I got news for you. If your son or daughter has a day where 20-7, and a good many of those goals, in your observation, you can watch a game and see that if your son or daughter is just having a day from hell, just not getting it done, not stopping it, and a lot of the shots are what we call outside shots. Those are your higher percentage shots to have a chance to make a save. If your kid is down in the 40% area in terms of save percentage versus shots on goal and so forth, that's a tough day. Guess what? And I'm sorry to say this, but those are days where Damon and myself and every other goalie out there, all you goalies out there, those are nights where we just got to get through the night. Mom and dad can be supportive from the standpoint of just being there to listen. And if they really don't want to talk about it, save it for the next day. And then all of you goalies, stop worrying about it overnight, and then the next day harp on it again. Go to your coach. If you have somebody who is working specifically with you, go to your coach and ask, what things can I work on? If you had a bad day. If your defense has a bad day, the best thing that we all want to do is turn around and go, my defense was terrible tonight. Why were they terrible? Did you have anything to do with their not playing or doing things that they needed to do to be a good team defense on that day? So in other words, take responsibility for your position. And I'm not so sure that there's any proper age to begin it. I begin it when the kid is willing to listen and has the ability to actually open up, bring out their innards and talk and be constructive with their voice.
Love it. Great feedback. Yeah, in the chat, a bunch of people were saying that they were, as a new parent, not a new parent, a dad to a new goalie. It's an awesome advice. So thank you. Yeah, I love that. If I could sum it up, one, all goalies are going to have bad days. Like, it's going to happen. So I think, normalizing it is a big thing as well. You talk to any pro, anybody I've interviewed on my podcast, Rod, I'm sure you've had days where you got lit up, where you just weren't seeing it and gave up a ton of goals. So it's going to happen, but it's not about that setback. It's about the comeback, right? So how do we respond to that? And like you said, Rod, sometimes you just got to wait till the emotions calm down. Cause I remember after I lost a wrestling match and my dad was right there trying to give me some advice. And I was not ready to hear it, right? Because your emotions are still going, and it's not like I'm not in a calm state to be able to receive any feedback. So sometimes you got to wait, but then it's the questions, right? What do you think you need to work on? Or even if you got shelled, let's pull out some positives. What did you do good that game, right? Let's keep doing that, and let's work on the things we need to work on, and let's have a great comeback.
Well, let's also accept the fact that there are going to be those days where you're going to get your head handed to you simply because you're playing a better team. And you learn from that. You learn from that. I saw someone put up a little piece here on mental toughness. that goes a long way towards training yourself to be mentally tougher and tougher. Every time I played a game against any number of teams during my tournament days of playing, I always knew a lot of guys on a lot of the opposing teams. I knew them very well from the standpoint of just what my life was going to be like if I wasn't truly ready to deal with them. Great shooters. And there were days where they would light me up, and then there were days where I slammed the door on them. There's no way that I was going to allow a bad day get in the way, because I'm going to see them again. And then if my head is in the wrong place because of what they did to me in a prior game or a prior tournament, it's likely that type of day is going to repeat itself. You must approach the next game from square one. Start over. Keep reminding yourselves. Parents, you can tell this to your kids. They train hard, they learn, then they train. They want to do this. All those little packages, all those little prerequisites are there. Remind your son or daughter after a day from hell that they have the tools. The tools are inside. They're up here. They just got to clear the nonsense out, clear out the fact that Pamela just got through scoring 3 goals on me. I'm really mad at her, or whatever. Or Damon, he just lit me up. I could not stop his shot. I can't see it. You got to get that out of your head and realize that you still have your package. It's there. And you got to bring it back. If you clog your head up with too much goo from worry and stress and, oh gosh, I'm embarrassed because I got lit up and all this kind of stuff, you're not going to be any good to yourself. So as parents, the best way to support is keep them focused, if you will, on the fact that they have the tools. They're working at this. However, they still do need to take some responsibility for their day from hell, because that will help to toughen them up. All right. That will help to get them to deal with failure, which the last thing I'm going to say on this is I have only had one occasion in the at least 30 years that I've been coaching and training kids around town here. I've only had one occasion where I asked a mom and a dad, how y'all feel about failure? Their immediate answer was, failure is absolutely not an option in our family. And I said, then a goaltender in your family is going to be a difficult place. That's not going to be an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And they were kind of surprised with that they didn't necessarily agree with it, but they were surprised by that. And what I told them was, failure is a good thing as long as you learn what happened. Try to learn. If you can't learn it on your own, you go ask, talk to Damon, any number of people, and find out what you could do better that will help you to not have that same failure over and over. And I've got news for your parents. When your youth goalie first starts out, that kid's going to have hundreds and hundreds of failures. They're called goals.
Yeah.
And what we try to train kids to do right out the gate, as soon as I get a kid to start working on this stuff, I try to get them to understand you're going to have to be lousy. You're going to fail a lot in the early going, but I'm going to teach you how to deal with this failure going forward. And the best way I can teach them to deal with the failure is to figure out what went wrong. What do you need to learn and understand and so forth. You young ones, if you go off to school and you take a test and you flunk the test, that's a failure. But if mom and dad find out that you didn't do anything to study for that test, that tells you probably what you need to do if you don't want to go through the same aggravation with your parents on the next test. You might want to study. So it's the same thing. I guess what I'm saying here in that line is that the goal is a life lesson. And a lot of things that we do in the goal that we learn, you're going to use in your life. So failure is going to happen to Damon and to Rodney and to all of us goalies. We just try to limit the amount of times that we create the same failure. If we fundamentally just don't attack the ball or do something with our stick that we're supposed to be doing in the goal, that might be the reason why we continue to let that same shot by. Learn it, train it, practice it, and then next thing you know, that failure doesn't happen as much. That's the whole goal in it.
Yeah. I think what you just said right there is the answer to another pretty common question that we get. Kalinch, Kellyange asked it in the Q&A box. We also got the question previously. Someone wrote in, and it's this concept of, the goalie feels like they need to be perfect, like they can't have a bad game, and if they give up a goal, they put so much pressure on themselves to have that perfect game, or they give up some goals and the team loses by 1 and the goalie feels like it's their fault. And then in the next game, they don't play well. So what you were just talking about has to do with a lot of, just a whole way of thinking about the position, but it really is, in my opinion, the answer to what you do in that situation. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure.
Yeah.
Years ago, I think one time when I was chatting with you, I told you about my little 2-goal rule. When I played a game, when I get in a game in Virginia, I had a 2-goal rule that the other team early on might get 2 quick goals on me or something like that, but they won't get a third until my offense gets me 1 back, because I had a lot of confidence in my offense. All right. So that's one way I try to deal with, get rid of this stuff that I've got to be perfect. Let me ask you a simple question, all of you out there. If you get in a goal and one of your friends comes over to you and says, I'm going to shoot 10 shots on you and I'm going to light you up. Okay. And you decide, okay, let's give it a go. So your friend stands out there. I like to do this drill. I do it with my son every so often when I used to be in the goal. I'd throw my son the ball out there at about 15. He'd catch it, do a front swing or step in and let it rip. And we'd have a little competition and so forth. Bottom line is, you get the ball and you throw the ball out to your friend. He steps in. I got only 10 shots. And he steps in and lets it rip. Boom, goal. All right. So then the next one, you throw it out to him. Boom, goal. Oh, now he's laughing at you, carrying on. And this happens 2 more times. He has scored on the first 4 shots, and you look awful. You're probably very ticked off at yourself, if not embarrassed, and your friend is probably having a field day. And Lord forbid if there are a bunch of other kids standing around watching this, all right? But then suddenly you wake up and you stop the next 6. So he got 4, you got 6. Who won? You did. You got 6. He only got 4. Okay? You won 6-4. And I got news for you. The people that write the newspaper articles, the people sitting in the stands, they don't care about the first 4 anymore. All they know is that you stopped the next 6. If you have that mindset, and remember, this game is a long game when it gets down to being in the goal. Lots of shots, lots of activity, and all this kind of stuff. You get 2 or 3 scored on you early. If you've got an offense at the other end of the field that's got some good stuff to it, you'll get some of those goals back. Eventually, the person who put the mental toughness chat thing up there, eventually that mental toughness is going to have to kick in. You're going to have to shut the door, get your defense working for you. A whole package. Don't sit there with your tail between your legs and make things turn around. If things don't turn around and you lose to that friend of yours where he gets 7 and you only stop 3, you got to shake his hand and walk off the field and ask yourself, what happened? What did I do wrong? What was my problem? And figure it out. Then challenge him to another 10 on another day.
There you go. There you go. I love it. Man, tons of great questions. I'm probably going to focus on the ones that are more about parents and kind of how to deal with that area. There's a bunch of questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. If we can, we'll get to all of them. Marcos Martinez says, what is your take on sideline coaching from parents? I've got a take on this, but I'm curious. Yeah, for the goalie.
Or just sideline coaching?
I would say for the goalie.
Don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah. Simple enough. I think that, what you can do is rah, be like a cheerleader, right? There's no way you can, even as a goalie coach or as a head coach, you should not be giving your goalie technical tips during the game. It's just way too much to think about and you can't process it. So you can't be saying all right, you need to step, right? The practice is the time to work on all of that. When you get into the game, your job as a coach and also as a sideline parent is number 1 cheerleader, right? Rah, let's go. maybe some mental
careful
tips.
You got to be careful of your body language. You mean well when you're coaching and yelling something out. Come on, John, you got to step to the ball. All right? Come on, you can get that one. Come on, you can blah, blah, blah. You know, throw that stuff out there. All right? Well, you got your kid looking over at you. All right? Your kid is going to start watching you. And if you make any kind of body language that looks like you're a little bit miffed or a little bit disappointed or something like that, oh man, it's a mess. They read that, they see that. And you don't mean to do that. You don't mean to make them feel bad, but they see it and they take it in that respect. First game I ever played when I was at Virginia was against the Naval Academy. We lost 11-9 and I was awful. So bad, I got booed. And when I left the field, my mother came up to me and in any number of different ways that my mother from New York would say it, basically told me, you'll never play another game like this. And I asked my mother, you please settle down. And if you can't, don't come to the games because people are going to be all over me. All right. That pushes me. I could care less, but it really got underneath her skin because she just didn't like seeing me getting pushed around or anything like that. But truly, I was awful. I was really bad. Keep your comments out to your son or daughter 100% constructive. Even if the kid is getting lit up on shots that perhaps she should be saving, all right? In practice, when I'm watching or observing a kid that's in the goal, I'll see him. I like to watch goalies and see what they look like upon missing the shot. That does not mean is my kid banging the stick over top of the goal? Is my kid walking around like he's mad as hell? Is she walking out of the goal and screaming at her defense because they're not in the right place or what? Not that stuff. I want to see, did my kid step to the ball? Is his stick in the right place when it went by, or did it go in the upper left corner and his stick is down near his left foot? That's a problem. That typically tells you something about the fundamentals of how he was trying to stop that. He might be guessing, who knows? But I look for all those kinds of things. Those are the things I will zero in on, as Damon says, when we get a chance to practice again or get into a huddle and I can talk to him or her during the game or something like that. The parents, your job is so incredibly hard because your kid is always the one in the absolute spotlight. And when they make a save, yay. When they don't make the save, then, oh God, and it happens. It happens. It happened with my mother. God forbid somebody two down from you. That's why a lot of parents don't even sit in the stands. Two down, how did he or how did she miss that? It was stick side high. Well, I got news for you. College ball, a shot 95 miles an hour, stick side high, that could easily go in. You want to know why? Because they may never have seen it. That's that fast. But a lot of people in the stands don't know that. So there's also a question out here I've seen about respect and understanding of goalies. There's a lot to be learned and understood about what these goalies are going through. So keep the coaching more like if she stepped to the ball and missed it, but she looked okay as she was doing it. All right. If she looked okay, maybe yell out, no worries, no worries. You were there. Don't worry about it. You were there. Good try. Good try. That's fine. You were there. All right. That's enough. That's enough. What you don't want to do is yell out a bunch of stuff that gets the kid now starting to look over at you all the time. When they do that, their focus on their job really does get interrupted. And I know, I understand that, and I understand you want to help and you want to, thank God my father was always up in a booth taking pictures. All right. He probably would have had a hard time not yelling out to me or something. But the bottom line is, I did hear years ago a middle school coach yell out at a kid. The kid was obviously struggling. Defense was not terribly good, and this kid was just having a hard time, and his defense was having a hard time. And the coach just at the top of his lungs yells out, hey, Joey, Joey. Joey turns around, the coach yells out, you got to make a save. Really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
mean, just be careful about the things that we yell out as well. Hey, folks, they say that us goalies, Damon, we're like left of center. They say that we're just unique individuals with little screws loose up here and all this kind of stuff. You can really upset the daylights out of your kid in the goal. I had a kid many years ago whose mom washed his sweatpants before a game. Ooh, big mistake. Look at Damon. I love it. Big mistake. Suddenly this kid's sweatpants are stiff. Now he's all upset about it, and that affects the Kanagan. You don't want to do anything with goalies that affects our heads in a negative way. Even if you're trying really hard to be constructive, you want to keep us moving forward and let us deal with things as well. I think you'll be really surprised if your kid is into it and motivated and wants to do this. I think you'll be kind of surprised over time, and it's neat to watch. That's why I love coaching them. To watch how they mature in the goal, their mindset changes, their attitude at home changes. They're not rude, they just get a little bit more huffy, so to speak.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Next question we have is, well, before we hit record, Rod, you were telling me that you got some training sessions finally going on this Saturday. The question is, if you're a parent, you never played lacrosse, like how do I tell if my kid has a good goalie coach? How do I tell if they're getting the right training, right? Or what should I even look for in a goalie coach?
Well, there are all different kinds of techniques out there for training kids, all right? None necessarily any better than any others, all right? A good example, the best example I always point out is the fact I tell people right off the bat, when someone calls me and tells me that their son wants to train with me, the first thing I say is tell your son to get on the phone. I want to hear it from your son. But I make it very clear that I teach what a lot of people nowadays say is is a new way of playing the goal. That just tells me how old I am, because all I'm doing is teaching the traditional style from many, many years ago. But it is a different style than some of the classic stuff that's going on right now in the goal, all right? And in the final analysis, Damon makes up how he wants to play in the goal, and I make up how I want to play in the goal. We all have our own styles, and your kids are going to develop that going forward, all right? So there is no right or wrong necessarily way that a coach is doing it in the early going with your kid. In the early going, like I said, let's go all the way back to the beginning. We were talking about how do we keep this kid motivated? How do you keep the kid having fun? So ask your kid, if your kid's working out with somebody or, in practice is working with a coach of the team for, a period of time, each time in practice and so forth, ask, you're having fun. You're having fun with it, all right? If the kid doesn't say I'm not, if the kid doesn't answer you enthusiastically and says, yeah, I really like it. This is fun. Yeah, this is good. This is good. You probably have a problem there. And it may not have anything to do necessarily with the way the coach is working, okay? The kid may not just like the idea that this goal thing is just kind of getting inside my head and I'm not sure I really want to do this. That's something to deal with down the road. You can't force them. Does your son or daughter, when they deal with someone who's training them, voluntarily, thankfully, a lot of the parents that I deal with, whose kids come to me in their first 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions or whatever, thankfully they will call me, and I don't ask them to, but they do. They just call me, they send me an email or a text or something, and tell me what their kid is saying. And thankfully, and I work hard on this. I mean, because I just love it so much. I work hard on it. And I want to provide a really good experience for these kids. And when I hear a parent tell me she can't wait to get back, well, that's great. There's two things going on there. One, perhaps I'm making it reasonably enjoyable for her to step into this world. Two, she really wants to do it. Not me. I'm not the one telling her to do it. She's deciding that she really wants to do it. And my goal is to try to make it enjoyable, particularly in the early going, all right? Because it just takes so much time. So see if you get feedback from the kids don't worry about what's being taught, but more so in the early going, Are they learning stuff, but at the same time, are they experiencing fun? Do they like that coach?
Yeah.
Is she fun to be around? Is he, kind of, I'm nuts. Obviously I could talk, but I love talking with the kids, and I love, kidding with them and doing little things to get them laughing and so forth, and make it fun, because I want them to come back. But I'm not about, and are you ready for this? I do not invite the kids to come back. You want to work with me, you have to pick up the phone or text me or however you do your thing and get a hold of me. I'm not interested in parents calling me all the time. All right. I want the kid to get on the phone or text me and say, hey, Mr. Rullman, can we get together? Hey, Coach Rullman, have you got any time on Saturday or Sunday? Blah, blah, blah. And I make time. I do not have this cafeteria list of scheduled kids that come there each day at such and such a time. And so I don't have that. I have 2 tomorrow, and my time is limited this weekend. Otherwise, I would probably have 6 tomorrow, and I could have 3 on Sunday for all I know. I can't wait for daylight savings because it gives me a chance to do something after work. But if your kid is being taught and enjoying the experience, they'll be happy. That's all you need to really know in the early going. You can ask them over time, what are you learning? How's that going? And that kind of stuff. Let them volunteer it to you. If they don't have really much to say and they don't indicate to you that they're actually excited about going and seeing Coach Damon or something like that, there's something going on there, and it may not be Coach Damon. It could be your son or daughter is telling you, I'm not real sure about this.
Yeah.
You got to listen to that.
By the way, we're at the hour mark. You're good to keep going, Rod?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, we're going to keep it going. A related question was, if I'm not getting goalie specific training in my practices, what do I do? And, the beauty of playing lacrosse nowadays is there are so many resources out there. Like when I played, and I know for a fact when Rod played, there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was no books specifically about the mental game. There was no books. There was no, nowadays, there is an infinite amount of resources, including this very summit, right? Available to you. So there really is no excuse to not know what to do. And if your goalie finds himself in that situation where they're not getting the specific training, I would say you've got to take matters into your own hands, right? Chat with the coach and hey, here's some awesome lacrosse goalie drills that I just learned from Kyle Bernlohr. Can we work them into the practice? Right. So I think you got to take matters into your own hands there. Would you add anything on that, Rod?
Yeah. Like Damon said, you're on a site right now. I think y'all are members, and you're very familiar with Damon, and I'm new to this as far as I've followed him for a good period of time, and there is so much stuff to read and to go over, and videos to watch, and these summits. There's all sorts of ways that you can get information about it. Now, watching videos and that kind of stuff is not the same as having the actual person there. But it's the cards that are dealt, and if you live in an area where there are a lot of lacrosse people around, coaches and so forth and so on, search out people that would be willing to try to give your son or daughter some time, and see if you can get some training and then start drilling and working on things and so forth. I think another thing that is also very helpful, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody else, and particularly my friend Damon here, but I love helping these kids. Damon and I are on the same page on this stuff. We're all about goalies. And in many respects, I feel sorry for them when I see, my gosh, the stuff that's going on out there in terms of how hard these shots are. And this is a whole different world. And it's the men's and women's game. Women are throwing that pill plenty hard. But I have no problem with people calling me up. I have people that call me from upstate New York frequently. Out west, people will give me a call. They just want to ask questions about things, and they just want to hear someone on the other end of the line. I have parents that would do it, and I also have players that do it. And some college players will actually pick up the phone and call me and just want to hear what I have to say about something. And I, I'm honored that they would actually listen to someone who's my age. But I'm always available to chat with people and talk to them. And if you happen to be coming through Charlottesville or something, you want to get together, let me know. I mean, maybe I'm around. And I'm glad to do it. I've had people actually bring their kids to Charlottesville and spend the night, do a tour of the university or something, young kids. And they'll get 2 hours with me. And, I love to do it. It's great exercise for me. But as Damon accurately points out, and this is a great place to start, this website is huge. This thing has got a lot of stuff on there. And he has truly touched many, many goalies that are very fine at their craft. And, it's kind of like going to camp too. We send our kids off to goalie camps and stuff like that. And when they get there, there's going to be several people that are going to be coaching them, and everybody's got different tidbits of things to offer up and so forth. After all, these kids are coming to a camp. You got to have something that you can offer them and talk to them about. Some of the stuff that they have to say is based upon what works for them in the goal. When I was playing in my latter years, my speed started dwindling a little bit, so I couldn't step quite as quickly. So I moved way up in the crease, and there were times where I would play a foot from the top of the crease when the ball is up top, left front, top front, butt it up. I would no more suggest that kids do that in the man in the moon. I did, but that's just me. It worked for me. When you go off to a camp, and parents will ask, well, how many camps do you send them to? It's your pocketbook. They're not cheap. But send them to a camp that, has, some coaches there that are going to offer some things up. And then when you go to the camp, kids, listen to a few things that they say, take it all in, try some of it, spit out what doesn't work for you, and keep what does. And then drill it, work on it. Because Damon does a lot of stuff with you kids. I try like the devil to do as much as I possibly can, but we don't have all the answers. And some of the things that we will suggest that you consider are not necessarily things that are totally suitable for you. All right.
Yep.
So you just kind of pick around. There are not a lot of goalie coaches around in certain areas. So parents, I truly understand what you're talking about. But then again, like I say, pick up the phone and get a hold of Damon, pick up the phone and get a hold of me or whatever. I'm glad to chat with you and give you some feedback.
Love it. Absolutely. And thank you for those kind words about my site. I appreciate that. H.J. Chung says, my son's a freshman goalie and has been playing since the 7th grade. My question is, how can I, as a parent, gauge his development? The scores are typically high in a lacrosse game. And many shots, they're scored right on the doorstep. So, the score is not always a accurate indicator of how a goalie performed on that day or in that season. So the question is, how do I, as a parent, assess, are they getting better? Are they doing good? Do we need to do more? Are we doing fine? And you were talking about sending them to a camp or getting kind of, additional exposure, whether that be a club or a camp. And I think that's one of the main things that I would say is, if they're not, there was another question that got written in about, the girl was just dominating her local high school, the local league, right? Like, what else should we be doing? Is she good enough? And to me, then, if you go to that larger pond, you can start to see, like, you can start to compare yourself against fish or goalies in that pond and get a good sense. But what are your thoughts on that one, Rod?
Well, let's go to the one about, you want me to take the first question and then the second one having to do with the young girl?
Sure.
Right, well, in the first one, you're asking if I get the question correctly. If in watching my son play, how do I know whether or not he's getting any better or if he's developing properly and so forth and so on, and et cetera?
Right.
I hate to be flip, and it's not as simple as it may sound, but ask him. ask them how do you feel things are going? How do you feel about your game? How do you feel about you're moving? Are you seeing the ball? Is there, things that you feel like you need to work on? Do you need some help? Do you need, or hey, if your kid is struggling the goal, the questions you're going to ask are not questions that are demeaning or anything like that. You're trying to find out, how does your son or daughter feel about the way they're playing in there, given that he's getting lit up and defense isn't playing well and so forth. Let the kid reach out to you and tell you how things are going. And then from there, you need to suggest, and this is hard for kids to do, particularly really young ones, in which case, then yes, dad or mom can, pick up the telephone, call the coach and say, I've had a conversation with my son and he's really wants to get better and he feels like he's struggling and so forth. Is there any way we can help him out? Can you get him some, is there someone who can work with him a little bit and that kind of stuff? There's nothing threatening about that. Coaches always get their nose out of joint if a parent wants to get involved and so forth, but there are constructive ways for parents to pull to the coach's attention. It's not that my son is getting lit up. I would like to know, what can we do? What are your suggestions, some things that he can do and that you as a coach can do with him to help him to right his ship and begin to get better and so forth going forward. I think your kid is going to pretty much paint the picture that tells you what's going on. I just don't feel like I can, they really put their tail between their legs. Suggest to your son or daughter to go to their coach and have a conversation and see if they can get some support there. If that's not a doable thing or they feel really weird about it, ask, is it all right do you mind if I go call your coach up and have a little conversation on your behalf and see if maybe I can help? In other words, ask to get involved, all right? And then see if there are some things that you can arrive at that can help put your kid, it may even come down to just trying to get the coach to do some things with your kid that will make the position fun again. If your kid's getting lit up game after game, trust me, not having any fun. And you're very lucky the kid's still in the goal, let's put it that way. It can't be all the defense's fault. It can't be all the goalie's fault. So something's going to happen to bring them back together. On to the next question about the superstar. My high school days were at Garden City High School on Long Island, which is one of back in those days, and I believe nowadays they're still very, very good. Back in my days, you either came from Long Island or you came from Baltimore, and you were considered a lacrosse junkie or whatever. Okay, then upstate New York started kicking in, and I want to say that my good friend Dom Starge is one of the coaches out there in the world that started to see Ohio and some of these other areas out west where they suddenly players were showing up in different areas, great athletes, and he started recruiting them. And that's when the sport started taking off all around the country. Look where Damon is, out in California and so forth. I thought I was pretty good when I was in high school, all right? I was recruited to go to the University of Maryland. I ended up going to Virginia, and I didn't get a dime to go to Virginia. I had a scholarship to go to Maryland. My brother wanted me to go to Virginia, and they needed a goalie, supposedly. I showed up at Virginia, and to my surprise and to his surprise was another freshman goalie sitting there. And then there was a senior, all right? And all three of us were vying for this job. Well, I got news for you. I was a high school All-American and yada, yada, yada. I got lit up in fall ball. I mean, they turned me around like a top. I guess I got the only way I can really address that issue is if you think you're good, that's good because you need to be confident and kind of dance that line between being confident or over here being cocky. You jump on this side of the line, you're in for a hard time. Over here, you can recover. Goalies that go on the cocky side and have a bad day, those are the ones that want to go home and hear how bad their defense was. Confident goaltenders that have a bad day, they're the ones that go home and they will talk with mom and dad about what they could have done to help and have a better day. Totally different. So if you think you're really good, that's a good thing on this confidence side. Just know that there's someone out there who, when they see you, they're eventually going to say to themselves, she's good, but I'm going to make her look bad. They're going to come after you and shoot hard, and they're going to challenge you. And to the extent that you're prepared for that will determine just how well you do as you progress to the next level. It's fine to be a bit full of yourself, but be prepared to get put in your place, because then you got to bounce back. All right. You got to get in that first quarter. You think you're good. You think you can stop it all. And next thing you know, you run into some girl on a team that you haven't played against before. She beats everybody out there, and she's having a field day sticking them on you. If you can't recover from that, you're in for a long, long day. So you can always be better. You can always be better. I don't place a lot in regional competition. And the reason for that is, number one, I sure as heck do not wish to downplay any particular region of lacrosse as being where they don't have the same type of players there as they do up there, and so forth and so on. You can have individual athletes that are playing in areas where lacrosse is not a prevalent sport, but they have a few club teams. They're not even high school sponsored yet. And there's some standout athletes that are really good athletes, and particularly in the girls' game. Find me a girl that can run like a deer, and there's a lot of colleges that will take her if she has the stick skills and the capacity up here to really want to work hard and play lacrosse.
Yeah.
So it's not too much of a regional kind of thing where you worry about, well, yeah, but she doesn't really play against great teams, and she's always the better of everybody out there, and the competition's really not that good, and so forth. Now, if I see this kid, I'm going to say to her, let's kick it up a little bit more in your competition here, in terms of you getting to go and we'll shoot on you for a while, make her life a little bit more miserable there. Let's test her. Let's see what she can do. That's up to her coach to challenge her to see what her limitations are. All right. When I got to Virginia, it was an eye opener. Suddenly, big hotshot Rodney Rullman, who came out of Garden City High School and yada, 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 I was at the bottom of the heap. And I had to work my tail off to get my playing time in my first year at Virginia, no matter how good I thought I was. Mm-hmm. If I put my tail between my legs because I thought I was really good and I can't believe that I'm being embarrassed and I feel bad and blah, 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 I probably never would have played there. They probably would have benched me, because you don't fight your way through. It goes back to that comment in the beginning about mental toughness. Be careful with, feel good about yourself and feel confident, but take it with a grain of salt, because trust me, there are other people out there, shooters, that just don't think the same way you do. And they will try to expose you. To the extent that you can keep that from happening, my hat's off to you. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Both Walter Allison and Mark Mancinelli, hey, Mark, how are you? Asked a similar question, which is about playing time. It might be, it might be more suited for a coach, but let's touch on it. I just get your thoughts real quick. So in Mark's case, they've got multiple goalies. And he was saying, well, do I go half and half to split time, in a game, like let one goalie play the first half, another goalie play the second half, or split games?
How old are they?
Oh, how old are your boys, Mark? I think if I remember, I'm going to say like youth, like, 10,
are these
11,
youth
12.
players?
Yeah, youth players. Yeah.
Well,
2029, he says. So that would be, help me with the age, but that's the year they're going into.
I was a math teacher for years, and I still can't figure it out. But never mind.
What year are we in? There you go. Fourth grade. Age 10.
When they're 10 years old. All right. So they're all still learning. Okay. You got to draw a line somewhere in terms of this win-lose type of stuff. All right. If you're trying to develop a program, if you're trying to develop a team, and you got, you have 4 goalies, that's incredible. I mean, you're golden. You got 4 kids willing to actually do this at 10 years old. You got to get them in. You got to get them some time. All right. And the problem is, if it's all about winning, now trust me, I'm all about winning. All right. They say that, winning's not everything. Well, there aren't many kids around that jump up and down and go, God, this is great. We lost. I mean, bottom line is, though, these kids are young. And if you want to develop them and you want to develop your team defense and you want to develop the other positions on the field, you can't leave out these goalies. If you do, and you only favor a couple of them and do halves or something like that, you'll probably lose the other two. All right. And that could be kind of tough. So I'm all for, yes. And I used to coach 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds in a league in town here where we had no set teams. I had probably 80 kids on a given day, and I would choose up 4 teams arbitrarily and put them on the fields. And I had plenty of parents helping me out, refereeing and whatnot. And I would just go from field to field. And the goalies rotated fields. All right. So I don't know what kind of league you're in. I don't know what the situation is in terms of the mentality of the team, in terms of winning and losing and all this kind of stuff. No, I'm not saying that we need to teach that losing is cool. What we need to teach is that at 10 years old, learning is very cool. All right. And the only way your goalies are going to get any better in this early going is to get some experience, to get some coaches believe, and it's true to a certain extent, that over time, if you got a lot of goalies on your team, you got 3 goalies or something like that, they tend to go through their own personal separation process, all right, where you're not worried about whether or not you're going to have to play all 3 or something like that. They kind of figure out their own hierarchy and they accept it, all right? But that's older. That's an older age. These young kids, if you can do it and everybody's understanding of it, and that includes your parents and your team and the kids and so forth, play them all and get them experience. Splitting halves, that's a great time. I mean, splitting halves in college and so forth is probably, I think I've only seen it maybe once, twice. Mm-hmm. When I was playing club ball and when I was playing tournament circuit ball, we split halves. Fine with me. Yeah. Fine with me. Go in and work hard one half, do your job, and then turn it over to the next guy coming in, and hopefully you're not turning a mess over, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
I'm serious. It's kind of a responsibility to your fellow goalies, so that you can actually use that to your benefit with your goalies, where they are a unit. It's not about just the playing time. It's about how are you contributing to the overall experience for this team in the goal. Yeah. What are you leaving in the first half? What are you leaving for the next goalie who's coming in? That's a great pusher. That can work. Yes.
I wrote a whole blog post about it. I just dropped a link to it in the chat. And the basic concept was essentially what you just said. Like, one, you got to get them playing time. So at that age, like you can't have a number 1 goalie who's always playing. Like, you got to get them in the game. And then there's pros and cons with either way, with doing full games versus halves. So I talk about, the different pros and cons in that post, but ultimately I think like what it comes down to, I personally prefer, splitting halves just to keep them more involved, like in the game and not keep them as cold. But I think ultimately what it comes down to too is what these kids prefer, right? What the kids and parents prefer. And there's some situations, or there's a team that I coached that, that splitting of halves, like they didn't like that. Right? They didn't like that. They preferred to do it the other way. And that's fine too. So I think there's pros and cons with each, and check out that post if you guys can. All right. Let's do a few more questions, because we've got another session coming up here in a half hour, and I got to take a little break and get going. Ben wanted to know if that was a Sheltie. We do have 2 Shelties that pop up. So let's see here. How do you handle, there was a question. Let me find it. Hang on a second. All right. Well, I don't know who asked it, but the question was, if your kid, if we're talking about high school level, college level now, right, where you do have one defined starter, like this is our number 1 goalie, he's going to play and the other guy is going to be the backup. How do you support that goalie as a parent if your kid is the backup, if they get passed over, for the start, and they're one of you know, they're the backup or they're one of several backups. Your thoughts on that?
Well, when I used to coach at a school in town, I had a starting goalie, but I hated the term starter. I had the person who basically was the first person to be in the goal, who got the warm up and started the game off. In practice, both goalies got exactly the same amount of time from me and the same aggravation from me in terms of their workouts, their training, and so forth and so on. Why? Because I don't wish any bad luck on any goalie, but we play a very dangerous position. And there's always a chance that the kid's going to take one right there. Now, I believe there's a company that you're dealing with that has a shield.
Oh, yeah.
Take a look at that thing. Parents, make sure your kids have a proper helmet on their Canoggin. That ball is moving. And concussions have been on the rise over years with particularly in high school and college goalies, because they're taking them in the head. And I know that the industry is coming out with different helmets and so forth to try to arrest this situation. But I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought there.
No, it's okay. I'm glad you plugged Lexi Shield too. That's the sponsor. That's the sponsor of the event, and we do need to do the giveaways. Let me ask you this. We'll close on this question. T Merritt says, at what age would you suggest a child to specialize in the goalie position? Because I don't know if we mentioned it, but I am a firm believer that, like, when kids are first starting out, they should also be playing in the field, like spend a little time in goal, a little time in the field. And so, assuming you agree with me on that, at what point do we say, all right, he's really enjoying goalie, let's switch over to the goalie position full time?
Well, you mean with a kid playing in the field, but also tests out playing in the goal, and you're trying to decide when is it time for that kid to switch from playing the field to actually devoting full time to the goal?
Correct.
When the kid tells you.
Yeah.
The kid's going to tell you. And
yeah.
you hit on something, though, Damon, that is very, very important. When people send people to me or suggest that I work out with somebody, I get a lot of high school coaches that will say, I've got a new goalie. She's just coming in. But one of the first questions I ask is, how good is her stick work? Or how good is hit? Can he pass? Can he catch? Mm-hmm. All right. And those that have had field experience, boys or girls, makes no difference to me. Those that have field experience that can pass and catch and move the ball around and stuff like that, that's where I perk up, because that is an incredible prerequisite that they really need to have if they're going to jump in the goal. All right. Because once they're in the goal, you're starting to work on different things about position and catching the ball and making a save. If they're just learning how to pass and catch, and at the same time stepping in and just learning how to play the goal, that can be a real problem for them and discouraging for them, in which case they're likely not going to stay in there. All right. In which case, that's okay. They probably ought to go back and play the field a little bit, learn to pass and catch and stuff. And when they are ready, they'll come back to you. And then they'll want to get in the goal and start working and that kind of stuff. A kid who is running up and down the field, and you ask what age, I've got some very young keepers that I'm working with now that it's truly, I guess it's really not that amazing from the standpoint. I'm very blessed to have at least 6 that I can think of that are very, very intent on wanting to learn and play the goal and practice and train and so forth and so on. All right. And they range anywhere from 12 years old all the way up through 16, 17 years old. All right. It's here. It's their idea. Every single kid that I get the opportunity to train, they always bring to me this mindset that says, it's my idea and this is what I want to do. And they've got the appetite to do it and want it. One of the hardest jobs for us coaches is to realize there comes a time when we have to pull it away from them to keep them hungry. They have such insatiable appetites to work out that there comes time where they might want to do something novel like nothing at all. and put the stick down for a while and get hungry and want to get back into it and so forth. I don't know what the specific age would be, Damon, because I've had, I've got one that I'm working with who started working with me. I think she was 10 years old. And from day one, this is the one I told you about the other day, who told me she's going to be mature, very mature in 6 years. And will I be willing to work with her when I'm 73 while she's getting mature in the goal? The answer to that is yes, I will. I'll keep going. As long as that kid goes, I'll go. I'll keep going. I'm trying to remember what the heck we were talking about there where I lost my train of thought.
I don't know. I was looking at the chat at the time. So I'll tell you what, though. I think that's it. There's still 19 open questions. I don't think we have time to get to them. So we didn't skip over you. Real quickly, there's if you bought the Elite VIP pass, which you get access to all of the sessions, a lot of people were asking questions about how do I reset? Like, what's a good reset routine? And there's a session from Jack Starr, who's the Yale goalie. And they had a sports psychologist come in and teach the Yale lacrosse team this reset routine. And it's awesome. It's really awesome. It's what I coach now, 2 kids to try to reset. So check that out. It's a great session. Rod, thank you so much. Everyone in the chat, if you could give Rod some love. I know you love talking about the game. We could probably go for another 5 hours. If we didn't have to go, we'll definitely be doing this again soon. I hope you guys got some good takeaways. In fact, if you could type one thing you learned in the chat while I do the giveaways. And go ahead.
If there are a bunch of questions left over that we couldn't get to, I'm more than happy to do it again, Damon. You just let me know, okay, and I'll make it work for you. Okay. Otherwise, through you or whatever, they can get my contact info. If they want to ask something, I'm glad to reach out and help.
Okay, I think Zoom saves these questions. If not, I'm just going to take a quick screenshot of all the open ones so we don't lose them. There we go. Wait, hang on. There we go. All right, we're going to do a giveaway for the Swax balls. So we mentioned, getting shot on with tennis balls. Swax is an awesome option. It is like kind of like a hacky sack that has the same size and weight as a lacrosse ball, but it doesn't sting. And that is going to go to, it says Jen and Maddie. And then we've got the Lexi Shield, which is an apparatus that attaches to your helmet and helps reduce concussions. And that is going to go to Joe Lynn and Anhal Verma. So if I just called your name, email me, damon@laxgoalierat.com with your address and what you won. Rod, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Take care, y'all.
Take care.